I want you to think back for a moment to the distant year of 2016.
I'd rather not.
A year when some incredibly crazy stuff happened. The Chicago Cubs broke the curse of the Billy Goat, ending their century-plus-long World Series drought. Great Britain decided to flip the bird to the European Union. And you may vaguely recall something about an election. It was a year, to say the least. But even with all the strange things that occurred, Netflix decided it could be even stranger. Stranger Things debuted to the world as a passion project about a small town in 1980s rural America plagued by a supernatural phenomena. Written by two then-unknown brothers named Duffer, it received rave reviews that caught pretty much everyone off guard. Its unique blend of sci-fi, horror, and nostalgia captivated audiences who clamored for more. And more they definitely would receive. So here we are, 10 years later. The show is in its 5th season, where the characters are 3 years older, 2 feet taller, and 1 season away from being able to move on with their lives, as is the audience. But was it worth the wait?
Unlikely.
We begin in the Upside Down with a flashback to when this show was actually good, Season 1. But not really Season 1, it's actually a retcon of Season 1, which at this point is all but necessary to even attempt to tie together all this shit. We see Will in Fort Byers being attacked by the OG Demogorgon. After doing some crazy acrobatics that he in no way could possibly have pulled off considering the fact he was half dead by this point, he is beaten to a pulp, captured, and brought to Vecna, who proceeds to use his long tube to fill the poor kid's mouth with some strange liquid. Yeah, that's a combination of words I wasn't expecting to say today. Returning to the present of 1987, we see Holly, the youngest member of the Wheeler clan, setting the table, when her attention is grabbed by a totally not in any way creepy figure standing outside of the window. Surely this isn't the evil, skinless sociopath with psychic powers who's been trying to kill them for years.
Don't call me Shirley.
Nah, this is probably completely unrelated to that. Well, since her family has ignored her going all the way back to Season 1, no one notices this as the rest of the obnoxious amount of people in this 3-bedroom suburban home pile in for breakfast. This, of course, includes the other Wheelers as well as the Byers.
Breakfast! Coming!
Oh, shit, dude, we overslept.
Holy shit, these kids have aged like milk. Clearly this house is overrun, a fact that Ted is not exactly thrilled about.
What do you want me to do, Ted, huh? Kick him to the street?
Is that an option?
Which is 100% the correct reaction when someone eats the last of your fucking bacon. I mean shit. That is an unforgivable sin. He should probably save Vecna the trouble and kill them all himself. As they all leave for the day, they tune into The Squawk, an unsanctioned radio station run by everybody's favorite local lesbian ice cream vendor, Robin, who has also conscripted Steve, who does a majority of the actual work, which is pretty much what he's done in every situation since Season 2. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why exactly do they need an entire radio station for themselves?
No, and I don't care.
Well, you see, the answer is very simple. It's to provide a plot device for exposition of the narrative. Because it's been, I don't know, about 1,000 days since the last episode aired, it's clear that the word assemblers required a means to remind you of the events which took place and all that's happened off-screen in the meantime. This comes in the form of Robin spouting anti-military propaganda, which she's pretty cavalier about doing, despite the fact that they are completely aware of the station's existence. She also updates people on the restrictive regulations and dangerous possibilities that might occur around Hawkins, as well as her love life.
Rockin' Robin has a date, ladies and gentlemen.
You know, because that's what everybody actually tunes in for. The Who's Fucking Who segment. It's actually quite nice of the authoritarians to allow these two to have their little rebellious media empire, which conveniently no one except Hawkins' residents are able to hear. This isn't some antenna made of aluminum foil on top of a roof, it's a full-blown fucking radio tower. Hell, most of these things have a signal radius that spans 25 to 30 miles. For my international viewers, that's like, I don't know, like 500 kilometers or kilograms or whatever the fuck you guys use. This raises a couple of questions. First, does anyone outside of this town even give a shit?
Not really.
No one's relatives or friends seem to have even noticed that Hawkins has basically disappeared off the map. And anyone who might drive down the road to check is met by a big fuck-off fence with armed guards. You'd think someone would at least call and ask what's up. Secondly, why the hell does anyone still live in this goddamn town to begin with?
Fuck if I know.
For the last 3 or 4 years, there's been kids vanishing, murders, giant monsters made of human remains, and a secret Soviet installation at the bottom of a shopping mall. Not to mention the earthquake, as they call it, showed that this town was pretty well fucked. And now they're essentially in an open-air military prison. How are there enough supplies or even people for this town to function?
I don't know.
How do they restock their stores, and does no one work outside of the borders?
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and hit you with an...
I don't know about you, but I would have bounced around the time a meat spider killed a bunch of people in the middle of a 4th of July sale. Speaking of the earthquake, what exactly was the solution for dealing with a crack the size of Rosie O'Donnell's ass running down Main Street? Well, you remember Chernobyl, right? Where they just put a giant metal disc over it? That was pretty much the solution. I can only imagine what the call for that was like. Yeah, Rusty's Salvage Yard. Nah, they don't make hubcaps that big, I'm sorry. I guess we could just, melt down a bunch and create, a giant one, but you're probably just better off doing it on your own. By the way, they barely protect this thing as neighborhood kids use it for sledding, and also it's incredibly easy to breach, as you'll see shortly. Since maintaining a radio station usually requires more than 2 completely unqualified teenagers, the equipment begins failing, which prompts Steve to call a significantly changed Dustin for tech support.
God, you sound swell. Let me take a wild guess. You're not calling to wish me a good morning.
I think Robin may have finally pissed him off.
Doubtful. She was encouraging compliance.
The remote radio head's the more likely
culprit.
The remote what?
Just read the manual, Steve.
Clearly drawing inspiration from Eddie despite the negative connotation.
Because I thought I was pretty damn clear when I said I didn't want to see you in that shirt.
Yeah, well, you also told me to stop screwing your mom, and that didn't stop me, did it?
Luckily for Dustin, he's friends with the only brother in town who is now much larger than we remember and has an ever-shifting hairdo. Rounding out the safety and numbers theme, Mike shows up to support them. But seriously, there's no way these jocks would be afraid of these kids. Mike is 120 pounds soaking wet. Did he really tip the balance that much? Let's not forget that for the better part of half a decade, they've had an orphan girl with a crew cut do nearly all of their fighting. Speaking of 11, where the fuck is she? It seems she's been caught by our boys in green, which is probably gonna cut this entire venture pretty short.
It's not her. Another goddamn burnout, sir.
Okay, what the hell was that about? That chick clearly looks way younger than Millie Bobby Brown does. If that wasn't her, where is she? Well then, I guess if your goal is to try and lay low and avoid the army, obviously the best way to do that is to blow up pumpkins in an open field. I'll tell you what though, if some recon division doesn't find her out here, a group of pissed off basic white bitches will. Turns out this Rise of Skywalker training course is so 11 can push herself towards some arbitrary goal time that Hopper has set to be allowed back into the Upside Down. Because as we all know, her physical prowess is super important when she puts her hand up and screams in the direction of her target. Back at the Squawk, Nancy and Jonathan have joined in the effort of getting the station back online when the latter and Steve decide to have a dick measuring contest. This manifests as one of the most ill-advised foot races ever, as the two morons ascend the tower with no safety equipment in order to impress Nancy. Look, let's get this one out of the way. Nancy doesn't deserve Steve. She barely deserves Jonathan and definitely deserves a smack across the face. Because with the exception of season 1, she's pretty much been an absolute twat waffle. Hell, even back then, she's the reason Barb died. Fuck Nancy.
What is it about your presence that brings out their inner Neanderthal?
Truthfully, the answer is that she's likely the last unmarried non-lesbian in this town. Well, unfortunately for Jonathan and Steve, all that bravado meant nothing, as Nancy didn't even see the outcome. She instead was distracted by resident conspiracy theorist Murray, who has arrived with a supply run. The funniest part about this is the fact that he was only able to sneak all of this shit in because at the highly secure checkpoint to enter town, no one bothered to inspect his cargo. He literally has grenades hiding under a single layer of fucking lettuce.
What the fuck?
Hitting a pothole would have exposed them. There is not a chance in hell that they would not have searched every inch of this truck before it was allowed through. And because of course he does, Murray somehow knows that the military is planning a massive supply drop into the Upside Down, which will allow Hopper to slip in and conduct a crawl, also known as a search mission to locate Vecna. In the school, Dustin, having not learned a single lesson from his previous encounter, decides that this is the ideal time to further fuck with the jocks by getting a snake named Jake. Very creative. From the science lab for an unspecified purpose.
It's classified.
The rest of what I guess we can refer to as kids for the sake of the show
Motherfucker, you look dirty.
have assembled in the cafeteria to voice their concerns over Dustin's recent behavior, which is warranted considering they are all supposed to be keeping their heads down and not drawing unnecessary attention. Instead of, fighting for the honor of Eddie, who likely wouldn't have given a shit what a bunch of random people thought about him anyway. Dustin then arrives and the group play off like they weren't just talking about him, which would have been a great little dramatic moment if it had gone anywhere. But instead of creating tension, it is immediately brushed aside because Robin sends a coded message containing instructions for the crawl later tonight.
We have a very special treat that's sure to turn your day upside down in the north end of Detroit. Barry Gordy, that's Gordy with a G, signed her to Motown in 1961.
The word assemblers would like us to perceive this as clever. However, we already know that the army is monitoring her, and would easily decipher this code. They literally have people whose job it is specifically to do that. We then enter the repetitive exposition phase as it frantically jumps between characters who all explain the exact same shit we've heard multiple times already. In sum, Hopper is going to enter the Upside Down while the military is distracted by their own supply drop, and everyone else will track him from the right side up? Ironically, Steve, the one we're often told is a moron, is the only one who bothers to question the necessity of attempting to find Vecna, who has for all intents and purposes gone dark and left them the fuck alone. But that shit ain't working for Nancy, who flies into utter bitch mode like she tends to.
I'm scared. And you should be scared too, because if he's still out there, he's planning to end our worlds.
Also, this would be a great time for Will, who is still having random mental attacks, which honestly just look like he passed out from jerking off for a third time in a row, to let everyone know that he indeed still feels Vecna. But he would rather just not even bother. He probably just wants to play D&D. Since we haven't seen enough characters in the last 4 minutes, let's go check out Holly, who sees definitely not Vecna standing near the playground in a way that would likely get him put on a list. This draws the attention of her teacher, who is the first person in this show's existence to show any type of concern for this girl. Within the Army's science compound, we are introduced to Dr. Sarah Connor, who is reenacting the dissection scene from Starship Troopers. She reminds us that they can make no progress until 11 is caught. So yet, another pointless scene, with the exception of showing us that the facility is located within the Upside Down. Which is a choice. Not a smart choice, but a choice nonetheless. One would assume that this just opens them up to needless daily assaults by demogorgons and other unspeakable horrors that are not worth the hassle. But to each their own. 11 argues with Hopper that she's ready to join him on a crawl, but he refuses to allow her. His reasoning is she still hasn't beaten his 12-minute 30-second marker for completing the obstacle course. This despite 11's insistence that she did this off-screen, which is hyper-convenient considering we all saw her fail multiple times.
You're totally drained, and you just happened to break your second record of the day.
You saw the time. I saw you look down.
Shortly after this, Joyce questions Hopper on why exactly he's so hard on 11 when she's a great asset. Which really just boils down to him protecting her and that he's actually pissed scared of what might happen on the other side.
I'm nuts, but I'm not that nuts.
Speaking of people who have lost their fucking minds, do you remember how Dustin went to get Jake the Snake from the science lab? Well, he has now placed him inside the locker of Alpha Jock in order to exact some revenge. He also makes sure his presence is known by tagging it with a message that could only come from him. I'm sure he won't regret that at all in the very near future. Seems like an incredibly retarded decision from a supposedly smart character. Side note, what is it with movies and TV shows always acting like it's really fucking easy to get in somebody else's locker? That's the whole goddamn point of these things. If you could just open them whenever you want, there would be no reason to have them at all. Mike goes to pick up Holly, who has been detained and likely recommended for a psychiatric evaluation, as that's the standard procedure when you see someone having a full-blown conversation with thin air. Mike then asks her if this is about her imaginary friend Mr. Whatsit, which I swear is not a name I just made up. He gives her a secondary option of talking to a miniature figure instead, which is better, I guess. Also, he flat out fucking lies and tells her that monsters don't exist. Repeat, he tells her that monsters, like the ones that constantly appear in this town, don't exist. Because not being honest in this situation is really gonna help her ass later. On the note of girls in this show who got fucked up by monsters, Max is still in a coma, being forced to listen to Kate Bush on loop. I bet she really wishes she had just died. Lucas and Will have come to visit her because, why not? It's not like more important shit is going on. When Will decides to satiate his coke addiction, it's here that he notices that Robin has arrived and decides to follow her for some reason. Which just seems like they really needed these characters in the same place. But for what exactly? I feel like this is the opposite reaction your average teenage boy would have, but he might just be confused by what he's seeing since it's not in the Dungeon Master's handbook.
Oops, this one's actually for my Aunt Judy and her lady friend.
Dustin goes to visit Eddie's gravestone, which has been vandalized, apparently a common occurrence. But this time it's just a bit different, as Dustin notices the message is written in blood before finding a dead Jake the Snake. Then out of nowhere, the jocks just spawn like poorly rendered NPCs to attack Dustin. At first he puts up a decent fight by throwing fucking paint thinner into Alpha Jock's face. By the way, this fight is over right now. He has chemical burns on his goddamn retinas. But instead he just shrugs it off and they proceed to beat the utter living shit out of Dustin. This puts him out of contact for the remainder of the episode, which is a nice little contrivance considering he's going to be needed in the very near future. It creates a situation where the only person who really knows what the hell he's doing is now inactive, and time being very much of the essence, they just need to wing it. Jonathan offers to go in Dustin's place in the chaser vehicle that will be tracking Hopper, but Will says that it should be him since he helped Dustin build it. Joyce immediately puts the kibosh on that.
Out of the question. It's just a wheel.
It's not just a wheel.
Damn, lady, way to make it obvious you have a favorite. Though as a person with a younger brother, I must say this is by far the most accurate thing in this show so far. It's funny how the most realistic aspects of this sci-fi horror series are all the domestic issues. Take, for instance, the Wheeler house, where we see that Holly is once again being ignored by her parents, who are arguing for like the 100th time. Her father, who admits he doesn't even know how old she is, and her mother basically calling her a freak. Karen, who might be the most appropriately named character of all time, berates Ted, who honestly seems like a tired old dude who just wanted to provide for his family and didn't expect to be part of a supernatural phenomenon. You know, like most suburban dads. Seriously, this guy does not deserve the hate he gets. Motherfucker doesn't even curse.
What the heck?
We mostly get the sense that Karen is pissed off she married an older man who basically just wants to relax and play golf as he approaches retirement. So really, who's the one at fault here? No matter. Back to Operation No Way in Hell Is It This Fucking Easy. As we see Hopper effortlessly sneak onto the lightly guarded military base that houses a top secret entrance to another dimension, only having to wait for the one lone guard to wander in a random direction for no apparent reason whatsoever. He then just jumps into the back of a wide open truck and simply hitches a ride into the Upside Down as Jonathan and Steve track him from the right side up. All seems to be going according to plan for about 30 seconds until the caravan is attacked by Demogorgons who rip everyone except Hopper to shreds in mere moments. An attack that Will somehow has a first-person perspective of. In the struggle, Hopper takes a stray bullet but survives the ordeal with no way to contact anyone. Will's FPS vision then switches to a view of the Wheeler house, meaning a Demogorgon is closing in. This prompts Eleven and bitch Nancy to race to try and intercept it, despite explicit orders from Hopper that Eleven remain unseen in public. Back at the house, Karen is doing what Karens do best, drink wine and ignore their kids' problems. While Ted does what Teds do best, work on their golf swing in the backyard. It's here that Holly notices that her nightlight is flickering, and because Mike didn't take the chance to tell her the truth, she has no idea that this means she's fucked. As a Demogorgon breaks into her room, she screams as the episode fades to black. Dear Dark Hour, my name is Holly Wheeler. All I really want for Christmas is someone to pay attention to me. When you first met me in season 1, I was 3 years old and no one really cared even then. Well, after 4 years, I'm now 10 and people seem to care even less. The math's not mathin'. So little, in fact, that I've begun talking to a man outside the window named Mr. Whatsit. But I'd really prefer if my parents would be there for me. Any advice? You know Holly. Very festive name, by the way. Unfortunately, I'm not Santa Claus, though I can put the suit on for you. I really think you're looking a gift horse in the mouth. Trust me, I know your kind of parents, and when you're around 15, which based on the passage of time will be sometime next year, they'll be so far up your ass you'll need laxatives to get them out. So enjoy the solitude, and maybe don't tell anybody about your imaginary friend, as you really don't want the state involved. Episode 2 picks up right where we left off, with Holly being attacked by the Demogorgon. Screaming for her mother, her cries fall upon deaf and drunken ears as Karen is too busy drawing herself a bath to hear the commotion. I'm sorry, this music isn't that fucking loud. Certainly not enough to drown out an 8-foot monster tearing up a room less than 20 feet away. At least Ted has the excuse of being outside, but even he notices this shit eventually. We can only chalk this up to complete apathy toward her daughter's well-being. Because if she can't hear this... any other trouble this girl encountered would have been completely neglected. Also, like, why ABBA? It's 1987. Has she not discovered anything better by this point? Luckily for Holly, she likely wears nothing but ill-fitting hand-me-downs as the boot she's being dragged by slips off, allowing her to escape to the bathroom. Karen initially disregards Holly as simply her most insane child until she sees blood on her hand, which apparently came from Holly's head despite us being shown no blood coming from her head. Now realizing they are in grave danger, Karen decides that if they are going to die, they will at least be fresh and hides with Holly in the bathtub. I'm just surprised they didn't turn this into product placement for Dove. Ted, having successfully shaved a couple of points off of his handicap, notices that his house is flashing more than a streetwalker in Soho, and goes to check it out. Which proves to be the only thing that saves Holly and Karen from either being eviscerated or drowning, whichever one came first. Though I'm not sure that this proves that Karen is smart or that this Demogorgon is just the absolute worst at searching for his targets. Making his way up to the bedroom, Ted comes face to face with a creature who has utterly tanked his property value by destroying the only bathroom in the house. Seeing his home equity disappear before his eyes, Ted channels Tiger Woods' ex-wife and begins swinging his 9-iron at the Demogorgon. This gives Holly and Karen enough time to escape. Or at least it would've if Karen didn't bust her ass on nothing. The Demogorgon, officially done giving Ted his home appraisal, turns his attention toward the two escapees, popping in and out of portals as if he was promised that there would be cake at the end of this venture, which leaves Karen with no choice but to turn to the only weapon befitting of a woman of her position.
Stay away from my daughter!
At this point, she's basically a middle-class Ellen Ripley.
Get away from her, you bitch!
11 and Nancy show up just in time to be late for all the action, to find both parents fucked up and Holly missing, which is a bit surprising that she even noticed. Spotting the portal is still open, 11 rushes to find Holly as Nancy presumably calls for help, as in the very next scene they are at the hospital, where she proceeds to wash her hands as vigorously as a Mormon who just discovered masturbation. Mike and Nancy have a brief conversation about how none of this is Nancy's fault. But I mean, come on, Mike. She was literally shown that this shit would happen and you did fuck all to prevent it. Also, can we collectively just stop making excuses for this chick? Lucas chimes in with an interesting revelation that it's been nearly 4 years to the day since Will went missing in almost the exact same way. He theorizes that this holds greater meaning and can in no way be treated as a coincidence. Since the Wheeler house is now a new ground zero, the Army has cordoned it off for an investigation under the correct assumption that 11 is involved, and plan to set up a grid to capture her, which is likely going to be very difficult considering she's currently in the Upside Down following the screams of Holly and the blood trail of the Demogorgon. Hearing some rustling behind her, she uses her powers to smash an unidentified target into a tree, one that just happens to turn out to be Hopper, who has now not only been in a multi-truck pileup and shot, but flung at high velocity into a sycamore. Does anyone remember when this dude was a lazy, out-of-shape cop who didn't give a shit about anything? Well, now he's a practically invincible badass soldier who can not only escape the Soviet Union, but fight off extra-dimensional beings while bleeding out. By the way, what are the fucking odds they would just run into each other like this?
Coincidence? I think not!
You'd think since he's been dying alone in here for a decent amount of time, he would be relieved to see a familiar face, especially one that has powers that can actually help him. But turns out he's pretty pissed and scolds 11 until she mentions that Holly's been taken captive when he quickly changes his tune.
Damn it, why didn't you say so?
And then the two of them just set off to find her like it's the goddamn Yellow Brick Road. Back at the radio station, Joyce, who has barely played a role up to this point, sends Robin to locate fuses as a guise to discuss the situation with Will.
It's like I was there. I was right there. I was seeing what it was seeing and thinking what it was thinking.
No shit.
This sparks an idea from Robin that if they can't locate Holly and by extension Vecna with their real antenna, they can use Will as a human one. But since Joyce has become such a one-note character, she immediately scoffs at this idea because it would place the only thing she cares about in the entire world at risk. She's totally okay with sending her boyfriend, older son, and countless others into danger so long as Will gets to be a dungeon master again at some point. But Will's balls finally drop and he decides that he can no longer sit idly by while others die around him. Out in the field, we see Steve and Jonathan getting the van jumped by some girl whose sister used to fuck Steve because basically the whole town has at this point. As they wait, the conversation of course devolves into an argument about Nancy. You know, because she's that fucking important right now. Jonathan views the events up to this point as a veiled attempt to curry favor with Nancy yet again, but Steve insists that it's more of a supportive role since Jonathan is quite frankly a shit boyfriend. Oh, how I don't miss high school drama. As they continue to bicker, Steve notices Dustin shambling down the street. Because even here in the right side up, everyone just happens upon the exact people they need to find.
Ooh, how convenient!
This wouldn't be an issue if they were posted at a checkpoint that Dustin knew about, but they are on a random street they happen to break down on. How the hell would Dustin know to find them here? In the Upside Down, Hopper is pissed at 11 for possibly exposing herself while en route to the Wheeler house.
I don't know why we've been crawling around in the mud all this time. We should have just drove you around in your hoodie.
Holly was in danger.
Yeah, and now so are you. What does Vecna want with Holly Wheeler? How does any of this make sense?
I don't know.
You've been acting on impulse, on emotion, everything I taught you not to do.
Not emotion. Instinct.
This is actually worse. Instincts are innate, automatic, survival-driven responses, while emotions are more complex, conscious feelings that can be influenced by thoughts and experiences. So the latter is actually a more astute and effective tool for the situation. On the topic of emotional responses, Lucas is once again torturing Max with Kate Bush as he explains to her unconscious body that everything has gone to hell and he wishes that shit could just be easy again. A sentiment shared by literally everyone in their 30s who is watching this show. Elsewhere in the hospital, Mike admits that he fucked up by not warning the family they were in serious danger.
Well, duh.
He discusses with Nancy the existence of Holly's not-so-imaginary friend, Mr. Whatsit, who is definitely unrelated to the current situation for sure. Realizing they need to talk to their mother, which is gonna be difficult what with the fact that her throat was basically ripped out, as she might have some information on who Mr. What's-It really is. But like, that would require that she actually knew something about Holly. While all that happens, Steve is reading Dustin the riot act about how his attitude and behavior have severely hindered their progress, and that the constant taunting of the jocks and erratic decisions have placed him in a very unenviable position. Steve is sick of being on the receiving end of lies and excuses, despite the reality being that he's only ever tried to do what's best for Dustin and the rest of them.
I have shown nothing but concern for you since forever. We are totally and royally screwed.
Correction, we are screwed because you don't know how to do the most basic thing. Just do it for once. Just admit it, Henderson, that you're wrong. Hey! Can you guys shut the hell up? Jesus Christ.
Joyce, finally given a job that she's qualified for, just sits at the radio futilely attempting to reach anyone. Which is especially funny considering the fact she seems blissfully unaware that the power is still out. She must just assume that this is what it's like on the other side of the line.
Joyce?
After a few minutes, the power is brought back online, and since she's practically useless and somehow never saw Back to the Future, Robin has an amazing plan to remove Joyce from the situation.
How long has that light been red? Shit. The flux capacitor's down again.
Is that bad?
Surprisingly, despite how stupid this is, it works, giving Robin and Will a chance to run off and do some human antenna shit. But we haven't seen anything good from the army in a while. Let's go check in on Dr. Sarah Connor, who is in the Upside Down lab being shown some pictures.
These were taken at a mall in Reseda.
Since we're on the other side of the portal anyway, let's move over to the other unfortunate souls who are stuck here. Hopper's injuries are getting the better of him as he and Eleven take a moment to not only address the physical wounds, but some of the emotional ones as well.
You're more like me than I'd like to admit.
What? A stubborn punk ass?
At least I was. Never listened to my pops either. I remember one day it got so heated he took me right down to the recruitment office. He made me enlist right there. The thing was, I thought I was smarter than the officers. I used to trust my gut and my instinct. Did a lot of crazy things in that war. You might call them brave. My daughter, she was brave. Bravest person I ever knew.
Honestly, every time we get to a scene like this from David Harbour, it's like an oasis in a desert of shit. As the conversation continues, it's very clear that Hopper is convinced that he's going to lose Eleven unless she follows his orders to a T. Because this moment has tiptoed on the border of competent writing with emotional responses for far too long, the two of them are interrupted by the roar of the Demogorgon in the distance as they go to investigate. But before we can see that situation unfold, we return to the hospital where Nancy is attempting to convince the doctor to clear their mother so she and Mike can berate a nearly dead woman with questions despite the small detail that she can't speak.
And I wish I could get you in to see her, truly. But your mother's recovering from surgery here.
Right, but even so...
No, listen.
The funniest part about this exchange is that it's framed as if the doctor is some heartless villain, when he's actually just following protocols. He has no fucking clue that there's a dimension of monsters and psychokinetics threatening the existence of the world. All he knows is that he has a patient who nearly died from a vicious attack that could still bleed out if her throat is strained. Since Nancy is a Karen in training, she does not accept this and simply gets on the elevator anyway, presumably to go find the manager. It makes you wonder why they wasted screen time showing her asking for permission in the first place. Seeing as how we haven't switched scenes in a few minutes, let's go see what's going on with the testosterone tantrum trio in the van. Seems they have picked up a stray signal, but Dustin is convinced that it's nothing important.
What the hell is it?
I don't know. It could be a million different things.
Okay. As they continue to trade more snide comments, they are contacted by Joyce, who continues to prove that she is useless to this entire operation.
Is your receiver in any way connected to the flux capacitor?
No.
This episode takes place in 1987, 2 whole years after Back to the Future came out. It was well established in the zeitgeist by this point. This would be like if a decade prior someone didn't know what May the Force Be With You came from. Well, since Joyce is a pop culture retard, Robin and Will have been able to get far the fuck away and are in full-blown psychic detective mode across town at the location of Will's latest vision. Being in such an incredibly time-sensitive situation, this is of course the ideal moment for Robin to clarify that she is indeed a lesbian in hopes that Will doesn't say anything about what he saw between her and Molly Ringwald earlier.
Lesbians.
Will, being just as over this conversation as the rest of us, quickly changes the topic back to his visions, where he comes to the realization that one of them was from the perspective of a child at a playground. The very playground from Holly's school. Back with Eleven and Hopper, they come across some disgusting looking organic wall that H.R. Geiger would absolutely fucking love, and conveniently also discover Holly's second boot, which has fallen right near it.
You're kidding. What a crazy random happenstance.
It took her. Through the wall.
Because you know we're all idiots, and we need this kind of clarification that she is indeed inside. I have officially run out of transitions to explain jumping between characters, so just know that we are with Mike and Nancy, who have apparently assaulted and stripped a candy striper naked in order to walk right the fuck into the ICU without so much as a desk nurse asking who they are looking for. Using a notepad, they ask their mother, who is surprisingly lucid for being in major surgery just a few minutes ago, a series of increasingly traumatizing questions that would likely send her into shock. However, she is able to maintain her composure and give the real name of Mr. Whatsit. With this new unexpected revelation, we see inside the Upside Down, with Vecna showing a captive Holly the Victorian mansion he grew up in, which amazes her nearly as much as the fact that someone is finally paying her some fucking attention. Hey Dark Hour, Mike Wheeler here. My entire family is in severe danger or near death. I can't help but feel a little responsible over not telling them exactly what's been going on. I could really use some unconditional support telling me that I consistently make the right decisions and clearly have leadership qualities. There's nothing on the fucking back. Well, Mike, I hate to break this to you.
Oh, no, you don't!
You're possibly the dumbest person on the show. Not only did you completely fumble on your family's safety, I really have no idea how you can't tell that Will is sexually attracted to you. Your complete lack of self-awareness is very concerning, and if I were you, I'd get a CAT scan. Because part of your brain must not work correctly for you to miss this completely obvious shit. Episode 3 opens up with Hopper stabbing at the snot wall, attempting to Shawshank his way through. Which is definitely the worst way to tunnel into anything. Even if this was actually working, it would take him at least 5 months. As that futile effort is going on, 11, the one who actually has a shot, is also failing. As every time she busts a hole with her powers, it somehow heals itself, exhausting her in the process. Telling Hopper she needs to recharge her battery, he breaks out some beef jerky that she immediately throws back in his face like a toddler having a temper tantrum. I mean, I get that it's not Eggo waffles, but it's not exactly like he has a portable toaster oven with him. Though honestly, her not wanting to eat beef jerky kinda makes sense, what with the slimy wall of meat right next to her. As she comes around and realizes that Jack Lynx is actually really fucking good, a patrol arrives, disabling her with some sort of psionic cannon. Which is really goddamn hard to say, and I challenge anybody to say it 5 times fast. Back in the Right Side Up, Joyce nearly hits Robin and Will with her car as she's looking for them.
You think she saw us?
I rate at Robin for not only influencing Will, but also exposing her lack of Trivial Pursuit knowledge. She tears into her, which is met by typical condescending Robinisms.
We really should have left a note. My mother says I sound perpetually insincere.
Will grows some hair on his sack and finally stands up for himself, pointing out how important he is to finding Vecna. In an attempt to channel Nightmare on Elm Street, we see this walking butterball turkey named Derek being creepily scouted by Henry as if he was a Hollywood film producer. Speaking of Vecna's targets, Holly is still playing house when she informs Henry that she wants her family to join them. But he distracts her with some blueberry pancakes, which she's not the least bit suspicious that he knows are her favorite, just before telling her more kids are on the way. Holly voices her extreme displeasure over the fact that one of them is Derek.
Should I just let the monsters eat him?
Yes. 1,000 times yes.
But Holly, being the sweetheart that no one ever noticed, can't even do this to her worst enemy and agrees to be cool with the whole situation. Henry then informs her that he needs to leave for a bit, but reminds her that the woods are dangerous and not to go out to them. But before he departs, he gives her yet another gift. At least it's not more Kate Bush. At the wall, the recon team leader is relieving himself when he notices the knife that Hopper retardedly left behind, tipping off their presence. Pisser then commands that the squad sweep the area with the hedgehog, which allows them to locate 11 due to the fact she's screaming in pain. This forces Hopper to engage in a firefight with the highly trained Special Forces operatives. Once again, this guy was an out-of-shape local sheriff. He should not be outgunning active Green Berets. Because Hollywood has no idea how grenades work, the flaming chain reaction disables the hedgehog. This allows 11 to use her powers to pinball the fuck out of Pisser in a way that certainly would kill him. Dustin apologizes to everyone for missing the crawl, as Nancy and Jonathan are reunited, and Will explains to the mystery gang that he's seeing Derek through Vecna's eyes.
That's a classic dream. It means you're a pedophile.
Before the single most insane idea possible is suggested, and that is to kidnap Derek.
What the fuck?
You heard that correctly. They are actually going to kidnap the fat kid, who we were always told is the hardest one to get into the van. The plan becomes even crazier when they decide that they need to abduct the rest of the family as well, and Robin says that she can get her hands on Valium to drug them. Someone sat down and wrote this.
We are so fucked.
Holly is living it up with a fully stocked fridge and clothes out the ass, which makes you wonder if she would even really want to leave this hallucination. As she's baking a cake and trying on outfits, there's a ring at the doorbell, which she answers to find a note from Henry containing a map into the woods. You know, the place he told her not to fucking go. Rejoining 11 and Hopper, they have officially taken Pisser hostage and have a very short window before they are discovered, because believe it or not, the army tends to notice when they lose communication with an entire squad. Hopper is not only concerned about this, but also the fact that they have seemingly found 11's kryptonite. But she's more worried over the fact
That soldier. He said he peed on the big wall.
Didn't realize that was her fetish. Hopper just wants the basics, like how to get to their base, but 11 has grander plans of getting the top secret information out of his brain, insisting that she can break him. They go back and forth about the limited amount of time that they have, but as Pisser wakes up, Hopper caves and gives 11 her way.
You stubborn punk ass, you know that, right?
It's time to bring back our favorite little psychopath, Erica, who might have the most jarring age difference between character and actress in this entire series. Channeling her inner Hermione Granger, she's busy being the annoying smart kid who wants to answer every question even though the teacher would rather have anyone else raise their hand even if they're wrong. To the educator's delight, Lucas and Mike pull her out of class to recruit her to Operation Multiple Class A Felonies because she happens to be friends with Derek's sister, or at least they think she is. You see, since this is middle school, Erica and Tina are no longer speaking because of a boy, the reasoning actually being much different than you'd expect. More on that later. But this actually allows the boys to convince her in a much more unorthodox way.
I don't think Tina's gonna want to talk to you ever again.
Well, why the hell didn't you just start with that?
Robin, in the pursuit of becoming the next Pablo Escobar, bribes a nurse for free movement in the patient wing of the hospital. As her and Will are nearing the room they need to get to, they almost run into Molly Ringwald, who Robin can't see because they still haven't gone on their date.
Lesbians!
A subplot that is so inane, it could have easily been skipped, since they conveniently end up in another room that just happens to have all the drugs that they need.
What an unbelievable coincidence!
They flat out just take the entire stash. So that nurse is 100% getting fired. I really hope that honey bun that she was given was worth it. While that unlucky healthcare provider needs to file for unemployment, Murray has somehow once again smuggled a bunch of shit into the town, even though it should be on more of a lockdown than ever. Everyone is happy with their contraband except for Dustin, who continues to be a prick.
Arcplug, that's it?
I'm also giving out free hugs.
You didn't get the turbocharger?
No.
The suspension kit?
No.
It wasn't a goddamn Christmas list.
And the fact that Santa Murray scrounged all this up in a single afternoon and smuggled it is a goddamn Christmas miracle. So, kiss my jolly ass!
Steve is modifying the van in order to increase the speed, but Dustin unilaterally decides that he's going to kill the resale value of Steve's Beamer.
Hey, get off the Beamer, man.
Don't you touch her.
Wait! Hey!
Shit just keeps getting worse for him. Nancy is also busy putting telemetry trackers into shotgun shells, which Murray is convinced will end up destroying them. But technically this has never been tested, so they march their asses out with sacks of potatoes to do so. As Murray and Jonathan are only like 7 goddamn feet behind Nancy, they don't even bother whispering as they talk about super secret shit.
I thought you were desperate. I thought that things were stagnating, that your mating competition was...
Hey!
Nancy, still being the bossiest bitch ever, just barks out commands as they successfully prove that the trackers will survive. Jonathan then takes an engagement ring out of his pocket, as it looks as though he's reconsidering his entire life. Returning to the Upside Down, we see Hopper interrogating Pisser about the wall. Pisser says he knows nothing about it, but Hopper doesn't believe him because he's special forces, and Hopper knew guys like him in Vietnam, and they always knew more than the grunts. Which, sorry Hopper, that doesn't mean he knows everything. There's still several pay grades above him.
I don't know shit about fuck.
Though Pisser does tell Hopper that 11 is incredibly dangerous and how she's directly responsible for the deaths of several of his comrades.
My men were in that chopper when it got hit.
Yeah, but they were all bad.
Since he's being less than cooperative, Hopper informs him that this has mostly been a distraction for 11 to probe his brain, revealing not only the base, but things within it. Walking around in his memories, for some reason 11 is actually able to view shit that Pisser has never seen as if she has some sort of debug code. Pisser, wanting nothing more than this mind grape to be over, pleads with Hopper, who tells him that it will all stop if he gives them what they need. Still refusing, 11 pulls it out of him forcibly by locating a top secret metal door within the facility. Using her powers to try and force it open, how is she gonna do that? It's a fucking memory. His brain can't handle it and he's knocked out cold. The more this scene went on, the less and less sense it made. She's wandering through his brain finding shit that he doesn't even have knowledge about. You can't manufacture non-existent recollections. She should have just got to the door and been like, he doesn't know what's behind it, so we need to go find out for ourselves. Which organically moves to the next sequence. By the way, for some reason, she's very convinced that behind the door is Vecna, which makes no fucking sense. Holly's still debating over whether or not to follow the map, because it flies in the face of everything that she's been told. Looks at the miniature figure Mike gave her and has a conversation with her tape of Tiffany. Honestly, even if she survives this, she's on the express train to the mental institution. She decides to follow her gut and venture into the woods like a neglected Little Red Riding Hood. At the same time, Derek and Tina are at home arguing before dinner when she tears the heart out of every single nerd who grew up in the cartridge generation of consoles. As the two of them run around insulting each other, someone is at the door and their mother gives them very explicit instructions.
And be polite, unless it's a Mormon or a Democrat.
At minimum, it's not a Mormon, but rather Erica bearing diazepam pie. She's invited to stay for dinner, a meal which comes with several heaping helpings of bitching as Tina and Erica begin bickering over why they no longer speak.
Why would I want you fat? Because you're still jealous of me and Josh. I was never jealous of you and Josh. Then how do you explain PE? It was an accident. Wasn't an accident. It was dodgeball. In dodgeball, you throw balls at people.
Since everyone except Tina is eating the pie, they all begin dropping like flies until it's just the two former best friends left. It's here that Erica jams her with a full fucking syringe of Valium.
I told you to eat your damn pie.
So like they're all dead, right? Or at minimum have some serious issues because they absolutely overdosed here. Not to mention the concussions from free falling from a standing position into a wood floor. The family is then transported to a super secret location that Vecna will never ever find. As the rest of them take another page out of the Nightmare on Elm Street playbook and booby trap the whole house. This all seems incredibly unnecessary. All they need to do is wait for the Demogorgon to show up and shoot it. If anything, the possibility of killing it hurts their plans. Also, what's with all the property destruction? Was this show written by Antifa? At the barn prison, Joyce is busy tarring up her lungs as Will comes out to talk to her. The two have a heart-to-heart about how she's basically just Marlin from Finding Nemo at this point, overly concerned about protecting her only child, or at least the only one she cares about. He assures her that despite what she thinks, she's a good mother and can't continue to blame herself for his disappearance that was either 4 or 10 years ago. Strangely enough, the only person who seems concerned with the whole situation of, you know, having a captive family in their possession and whatnot is Robin.
What kind of criminals does your uncle defend exactly?
As she prepares for the inevitable criminal and civil suits, the lights begin to flicker outside of the house and the Demogorgon appears. One that is dumb enough to fall for the old trick we all tried to use on our parents as kids. Lucas busts into the room and starts pelting it with water balloons filled with acetone, which, by the way, he's supposed to be the athlete in the group and he throws like this. It then chases Lucas before falling into a hole where Barb finally gets justice, as the demo becomes tangled in the wire of her namesake. You'd think Nancy would take the opportunity to take the shot, but she can't because for some reason she forgot to do the most important thing.
You forgot to reload the damn gun.
Luckily for her, though, she manages to pull off this incredibly difficult feat and pump one into its back. Steve and Dustin take off in the Beamer and chase down the demo, causing even more property damage as they drive through people's backyards. You'd think that they could just drive down the street side and follow the lights that are flickering, but that would be too easy. It's here that the Demogorgon abruptly changes directions and begins heading back, but where is it headed? Well, it turns out he knows exactly where their super secret hideout is because their plan isn't worth shit and Vecna figured it all out. To make matters worse, Derek has woken up from his coma. I guess he needed a higher dose. You see, this is why kids' medicine bottles don't just go by age, but by weight as well. But since them being attacked is actually kind of interesting, we're gonna leave that plot. Why? Because we need to see that Holly has officially gotten to the end of the map where she's found a random-ass cave. It's here that she's scared shitless by the most soulless thing in the Upside Down.
Oh, Jesus!
Dear Dark Hour, it's Nancy Wheeler. Oh, fuck. I need some advice on how to deal with my current boyfriend and ex-boyfriend fighting over me. It seems like every time I turn around, they've made some inane task into a competition to impress me. It's like so annoying, it really takes away from me focusing on me. So like, what do you think? Should I break up with Jonathan, who's been really good to me, but honestly is kinda frumpy and mopey? Or tell Steve to leave and take his perfect hair and dad qualities with him? Well, Nancy, I don't think you should make either of these choices. I think you should isolate yourself from society and really focus on God. I'm personally not religious, but I think it's best for everyone involved if you were to go that route. For someone who earlier in her life seemed like she was sweet, you have turned into an incredibly terrible person. In the words of Hamlet, get thee to a nunnery. And in the words of Dark Hour, get the fuck out of my sight, you twatty bitch. Jonathan and Steve will be just fine without your anorexic ass. We begin with Joyce screaming in Derek's face to calm down, a method which never works.
Do you know who I am? An evil child kidnapper.
He's out of line, but he's right.
She attempts to connect with him as a regular mom by introducing him to Will, as if he wouldn't know about the kid who died and came back to life, which was the official report given back when it happened. She then unties him, and like a greased up watermelon, he's able to escape, somehow getting his fat ass up a ladder before anyone else can catch him.
Bullshit! Bullshit!
This might be the most fat-letic spiral ham I've ever seen. Since they didn't bother to barricade the door, which honestly probably would have done fuck all anyway, the Demogorgon breaks in very easily. And because Joyce is suddenly super mom, she grabs an axe and starts wildly swinging at the demo, all while Will sees her through its eyes. Pushing the demo back, she manages to get it out of the barn where it's promptly run over by the Beamer, lowering its trade-in value by several $1,000s. Realizing it's just not having a good day, the Demogorgon puts in for its PTO and jumps back into the Upside Down. It's here that Steve, who's of course known for his big brain, gets the bright idea to exploit his insurance by driving his car through the portal, where he can then declare that it was stolen, despite the protests of the others who have no stake in the fraudulent claim.
Gates are kind of like peanut butter poppers, right?
What?
Crunchy and tough, but then you bite down on it, gives way to a gooey, creamy core.
Dude, what? Oh, God. Jesus Christ! Oh, my God!
Somehow they make it through to the other side and pick up the signal again. It's around this time that the army decides fuck subtlety and begin rounding up kids to concentrate them into one area. A camp for these children, if you will. Which all the parents seem uncharacteristically okay with. In the Upside Down, the Demogorgon is slowly getting away from the beamer as Dustin is having a hard time tracking it, which isn't aided by the fact that they can barely see anything. Dustin and Steve, having been okay with each other for the last few minutes, decide that they need to remedy that situation and begin arguing again, leading to Steve taking his eyes off the road and slamming directly into the meat wall. Joyce, once again failing Communications 101, can't get a hold of anyone as Will is busy doing arts and crafts, decorating the barn with his visions. Derek has stopped being a pain in the ass for a minute and actually begins listening, likely because he's low on calories. As Will explains that he's probably not supposed to be seeing all this, they are able to convince Derek that Mr. Whatsit is not a good guy and that he needs to help them. Will spells out that Vecna is using the kids to form some sort of spires around the town's perimeter, and more will soon follow. This is when Lucas and Mike show up to tell them about the child internment camp. Speaking of child spires, for some asinine reason, Dr. Sarah Connor is convinced that 11 has been taking all the kids because that makes fucking sense. She's probably just having Terminator flashbacks at this point. Dr. Connor then decides that they shouldn't even bother trying to find the clearly disposable men that were sent to die. And because her number one concern is the morale of her men, she gives no fucks about the fact that the children are in danger and brushes off all of her subordinates' concerns.
It's only reckless if you fail to protect them. Are you telling me you can't protect them, Sergeant?
Holly and Max are in the... I guess we need to name this fucking place too, the right side down? Having a discussion about how it's really weird that Max is here when she's actually supposed to be in a coma. Even though Max insists that she's here to help, Holly isn't so convinced. In order to prove herself real, she lets Holly know that she remembers the time when Mike wanted to give himself an orange mohawk to be cool, but Holly talked him out of it.
And personally, I think the use of the word hot is a bit ironic, but...
Which I guess is proof enough for her, despite the fact that everyone in this world seems to know everything about Holly. Max takes her to the cave that she's been hiding in, showing her that it overlooks an endless canyon, explaining this is in fact a prison of memories. Henry's memories. Back with the kids on the bus, the lady with the biggest glasses in the history of glasses explains that despite the fact they were ripped from their homes in the middle of the night, these are the good guys. Seems legit. Erica informs the others that the children are being held at the base, so they all come up with a plan that involves using the underground tunnels to smuggle them out. Robin uses the Great Escape, Tom, Dick, and Harry concept as a basis to figure out which one is the best method.
For us, I like Dick.
I mean, at least they didn't go completely on the nose and have Will say this. The only issue is that they need to figure out where on the base the children are being held. Now, wouldn't it be convenient if they still had the only kid in town in that age range available for this task?
What?
Pisser, who is apparently very not dead, escapes his restraints and begins heading back to the base where Hopper and 11 are trying to formulate a plan to get inside. You see, 11 wants to jump the fence, but Hopper refuses, based on the fact that there's a really good chance that she dies in the process, because landing on a metal roof will make a shit ton of noise. But 11 knows something about this place that we have never noticed before.
On a jump, you can alert the whole damn base.
Not if I time it with the thunder. It's 7 seconds. 5, 6...
So either the thunder is specifically designed to do this by Vecna, which... why? Or it's very unrealistically consistent. The two of them are blindsided by contact from Dustin, who explains at warp fucking speed how they ended up in the Upside Down and that they hit the wall. Much to the surprise of Hopper, who says that they're on the opposite side of town. Since he now needs to go help the others, Hopper of course changes his mind about letting 11 go into the base. Wait, that can't be right. That's only going to delay him further. I guess he really doesn't give two shits about the others. Derek waddles his fat ass up to the base and they just take him in with no questions asked, even letting him keep his G.I. Joe lunchbox with the very conspicuous hole in it. And just like that, Operation Dick Appreciation is a go. Murray is back again with even more unvetted goodies, since no one ever bothers to check his fucking truck. A truck which now boasts a completely standard child abduction chamber built into it. Derek contacts Joyce and she tells him to find any kids who have talked to Mr. Whatsit, and also informs him that
You're not dipshit Derek. You're delightful Derek.
Bullshit! Bullshit!
Back with 11 and Hopper on their suicide mission, the former successfully times her jump to get on the base, while making sure to wear a facial covering so they don't confuse her with any other teenage psychic girls attempting to break in. She continues making her way through, seemingly forgetting that her powers work from a distance, and only using them when she's within a few feet of the guards.
God
Sorry.
Derek is attempting to get the other What's-It kids to follow him, but there's this slight problem of they all fucking hate him and just think he's crazy.
The monsters are coming and you're all gonna die. Ha 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 ha.
Derek? Were you talking about Henry?
In the Upside Down, Nancy, Jonathan, and Steve are all arguing about high school bullshit when Dustin comes running in and tells them that he's figured out that the wall is actually a circle around the town, which is something we as the audience all figured out a long time ago. But it does explain the interference and inability to track things. And to the surprise of no one, the Department of Energy building where this all started is the center point. Okay, so let's take a slight detour into the Right Side Down, where Max gives us the tale of how she's been trying to get the hell out of this place for some time. I mean, one might say that she's been running up that road, running up that hill, running up that building. She'd probably make a deal with God to swap places. Though all she's been able to accomplish is relive a bunch of somebody else's shitty memories. But because Lucas insists on continuously playing her favorite song that would get this video copyright claimed, she was able to find the exit, only to have it close at the last moment due to the limitations of 80s technology. Hilariously, she would have been able to get through if she didn't stand around for 45 seconds looking confused about finding the one thing she's been looking for this whole time. This was also when she came face to face with Vecna, who chased her all the way back through the memories, but for some unknown reason stopped at this cave they are currently in, paralyzed by fear. So she just decided to live there. But she does inform Holly that she needs to return to Henry's house and keep up the appearance of normalcy. In the tunnels, even though the lives of countless kids are on the line, Robin thinks this is the ideal time to have the "it's okay to come out" conversation with Will. She asks him if he remembers a girl that they went to school with, which he does because she was a terrible singer. Robin tells him that she had a huge crush on her and explains what it felt like.
I mean, the first time I saw her, oh my God. In 9th grade, I thought that she sounded like Whitney goddamn Houston. It was right then and there that I knew she was the one.
Which seems a bit unnecessary since he's in high school, he should know what a fucking crush is. But then Steve the Hare Harrington kind of stole Tammy away, which means that she wasn't a lesbian. And it broke Robin's heart and she couldn't focus on anything. What snapped her out of it was finding a home movie of herself, which helped her find joy again. Also probably the fact that her parents are rich actors. Mike and Lucas find the correct spot and start tunneling up, damaging the pipes in the process, which I'm sure won't be a problem. 11 and Hopper steal a key card from a scientist who doesn't have the proper clearance, so Hopper just knocks the poor bastard out.
Guy was a piece of shit.
He learned today that it's not okay to be mid, especially at your job. Well, because that's a piece of useless plastic, they attempt the brute force method, which to their shock sets off more psionic traps. Did they really not think that there would be internal defenses? Back at the base on the right side upside of things, Derek has apparently become a messiah of some sort, leading the children in a vision quest. It feels like we missed some key details here. He begins sending the kids into the restroom just as Lucas punches a hole through the floor of one of the stalls. But luckily none of the guards or teachers need to pee or anything because they would definitely notice the huge hole in the floor that is not obscured at all by the door, or the fact that there's now water squirting everywhere from the damaged pipe. Let's check in on 11. Well, she's pretty fucked right now as Sarah Connor approaches with some of her trademark trigger discipline. But 11 is less than amicable, telling her that her and her men will die. Men like Pisser, who looks like a postal worker nearing the end of his rope. He's leading a team of men in search of Hopper, but instead they end up murdering the poor scientist, who I'm guessing was 2 days till retirement. Because of the fake out, Hopper gets the drop on them, killing everybody except Pisser, because that's how things work with automatic rifles. And this of course means that they need to have a fist fight, which ends after they stumble into a hentai lover's dream room. Sarah Connor waltzes her ass in and tells him not to struggle, as it will only tighten the tentacle's grip around his neck. But I can tell you from personal experience as a guy who's been choked unconscious multiple times, he would already be out here. Operation Dick Appreciation has gone tits up as the bathroom is flooding and they've been caught by one of the non-What's-It kids. Sarah uses the monster to skirt around the office's policy of adult entertainment while asking the one question we are all wondering.
And after all that effort to hide her, you bring her here?
But she also just seems genuinely clueless for the person who's supposedly in charge. She continues to torture Hopper since 11 can't help with her powers, but she does find a way around that. Ah, aggressive scissoring, I see. This allows Hopper to break free and deliver some equality.
I'll be quick.
Murray picks up the kids in a way that makes it seem like he's done this before. But the escape plan has gone to hell as the full-grown soldiers have successfully overpowered the much smaller children on a slick floor. Hopper breaks a window to allow 11 to escape as she notices some explosives under his jacket. He assures her that it's only a failsafe and that he's proud of her before leaving. Honestly, I think this dude really just wants to die at this point. Since the following shit is so chaotic, I'm gonna go rapid fire for a bit. Murray and Robin load the kids into the truck. Erica says the remaining ones are captured. Joyce yells at the commander about how the children are in danger, and he's like, "Bitch, why do you think I'm here? We have a better chance of protecting them than your grape van." Will does Will things and touches the back of his neck as Demogorgons arrive. Glasses Lady tells the kids to hide under their beds like it's a nuclear attack because of the firefight outside. Wait a minute! You're telling me that these motherfuckers are standing in a goddamn prayer circle of gunfire, and not a single one of them is taking a stray bullet? Seriously? Look, this whole sequence is batshit insane. Not only would practically every person here be peppered with friendly fire, it also breaks the internal rules they already established in prior seasons. Yes, the Demogorgons are very resilient, but they're not invincible. Here they're being hit with hundreds if not thousands of rounds, not to mention flamethrowers. Not only do the main characters have heavy plot armor, now the monsters do as well. I'd say the fact that none of the soldiers accidentally killed each other gave them a narrative shield, but they just get torn up by Demogorgons shortly thereafter. Probably because the Duffer Brothers have deemed their purpose to the script over. But you know, a housewife with a wine bottle survived a similar thing. Anyway, Mike takes charge of the group because we all know he's the undisputed leader of never making incorrect decisions. He instructs them to get over to the Radio Shack, which just makes me sad, reminding me of all the dying stores of my youth. It's here that Will collapses under the weight of his closeted homosexuality. Also, Murray is having way too much fun.
What just happened?
I have no idea, but I love it!
Eleven's still at the base because she's a teenage girl who never listens, which means that great little moment between her and Hopper meant nothing and was just wasted screen time. But luckily she didn't leave because Hopper has found something that she needs to see. Ah yes, a character we not only forgot, but were better off for it. Well, with that underwhelming revelation done with, we can at least return to the interesting nonsensical bullshit. Vecna emerges from the portal and just fucks up everyone and everything effortlessly, even going so far as to do the Magneto grenade pin pull. Demogorgons have caught up to the truck, so Murray just flips that shit, and like every other scene in this show, everyone's fine. But that doesn't stop the demos from taking the kids. Everyone is officially cornered and definitely gonna die, right? Like, someone important is gonna meet their maker. We need some sort of stakes here. Vecna pulls Will towards him and explains why he chose children.
Because they are weak.
He then just drops Will for no apparent reason and simply walks away. What are you doing? Just fucking kill them! Literally half the people who can stop you are here. This will solve a huge problem for you. As the gang is preparing for their ass reaming at the hands of Demogorgons, Will has a series of flashbacks reminding him about everything, including the time he met Mike.
Do you want to be friends?
Snapping out of it, he sees the object of his desire in trouble and somehow taps into his own psychic powers. With his newfound abilities and everyone once again removed from the possibility of being killed, Will wipes blood from his nose and triumphantly looks into the camera. And just like that, we're at the halfway point. Whew, that was a rough one. As you probably noticed, I integrated some of my character critiques into gags earlier, and this was out of sheer necessity. Because the Duffer Brothers are essentially allergic to giving any stakes to the main cast, they have effectively amassed a nearly unmanageable ensemble, and it shows. Many of them have long since lost any complexity they once had. That's not to say that they were the most dynamic personalities in television history to begin with. They have always been a collective of cliches and stereotypes. But at least they didn't come off as singularly focused AI that has been given one task they must see to completion. Joyce is by far the worst culprit of this, as they basically have pushed her back to season 2 and left her there. She is there for one reason and one reason only: to be hysterical about Will's safety. She's basically eye-rollingly annoying at this point. Not aided by the fact that Winona Ryder has long since checked out. To say she's phoning it in would be insufficient, as at this rate she'll be the president of AT&T by the time the final credits roll. It's crazy to think just how much she acted her ass off at the beginning of this.
Kidding me? He's my son, Hop! My son!
The antithesis of Ryder is definitely David Harbour, who's gonna need fusion surgery from carrying this show on his back, even if it's mostly just him constantly telling Eleven to get back in her metaphorical room. You can tell that because his big break didn't come until relatively late in his career, he is fighting tooth and nail to make sure that he stays relevant as long as he can after this is all said and done.
That hurt.
Two characters who are intrinsically connected at this point are Dustin and Steve. In past seasons, their relationship has been one of the most important for not only progressing key plot lines, but also for contributing to the insane character growth we've seen out of Steve. Seriously, if maturation was a foot race, Steve would be the Usain Bolt of this show, which makes it all the more jarring to watch it deteriorate in such a contrived way. Dustin becoming such an insufferable prick has taken one of the genuinely wholesome aspects and made it into an irritant. Hopefully this will be corrected by the finale, because it would be a shame to leave off on such a sour note.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I know there's a ton more characters to address, such as Will and Eleven, but I'll do that in the follow-up because I really would like to see where their stories go from the end point we saw at episode 4. I don't think this is going to come as a shock to anyone, but 3 1-hour and 1.5-hour episodes begins to drag after a while. There are a ton of repetitive conversations and plot lines which add little to the overall narrative. At minimum, each one of these could have been at least 25% shorter than they were and still accomplish the same amount of storytelling. The utter insanity that the final episode will actually exceed 2 hours really says to me that they refuse to leave a single thing on the cutting room floor, making this very much the opposite of efficient storytelling. In terms of production value, there's very few things that could compare to this show. The CGI is still some of the best out there, and the 80s style still has that authentic look. Which is actually kind of shocking, because this series has more obvious product placement than The Truman Show.
What the hell does this have to do with anything?
You'd think they would have more instances of incorrect labels or wrong era car models, but I for one haven't noticed any. So I guess we won't be seeing any 21st century Starbucks cups as the gang plans out their missions. I'd love to say that this was an impressive feat, but considering the budget for this season was somewhere north of the $400 million mark, it better goddamn well look amazing. Because for $50 million plus per episode, you do not want to be the guy who fucks something up on set, cause that shit will follow you forever. So it's incredibly hard to believe that after 4.5 hours, we're only halfway through this season. And so far, it really doesn't seem like it was worth the wait. Stranger Things at this point feels like a remnant of a bygone era, having long overstayed its welcome and milking its premise to death. It was a series that many people enjoyed when it first arrived, but like anything 10 years later is such a distant memory that most people have lost their connection to it. Yeah, there's still plenty of people watching, but the passion and hype has long since died off, and most of the best ideas were used up even before that. It had a good run, but was never able to break into that timeless classics tier, which doesn't make it a failure, just something that outlived its shelf life. And if that doesn't convince you to not really expect to be blown away by this drawn-out finale, I don't know what to tell you.